Your rent payments might help you build your credit. Canadian credit bureaus are testing to see if rent payments could improve credit scores of roughly 5 million Canadians. Equifax and TransUnion are looking to collect rent payment data from landlords. They would also look into collecting the same information from the government for those who rent through government subsidized housing. The data collection would be subject to the consent of renters, and I can see this being a good thing, but also bad, which I'll get to after stating the obvious reasons of why they're doing this in the first place. Renters could potentially get a boost in their credit for rent they pay their landlords. The advantage to someone who has a good credit score is that banks and private lenders who give out loans for mortgages come up with mortgage rates tailored to the borrower based on their credit score. So the higher the credit score, the lower the interest rates, and lenders look at the credit score because it tells them the likelihood of repaying the mortgage loan. They want less risk of default where loans are not being paid back. Most people don't know how or what makes up a credit score. Your payment history accounts for 35% of your credit score. This is when you make payments towards your credit cards, loans, and other accounts on time. Avoid late payments and missed payments because they hurt your credit score. Good payment history helps to create a strong credit score. So when you're making payments every month on time towards rent, you'd expect a boost in your credit as well. Just like credit cards and other loans, you'd have to make sure you pay your rent on time, so avoid paying rent late. And eventually, you could see your credit score go up, and that will help with a better mortgage rate. And according to borrowwell.com, having a credit score of 680 or above gives you the best shot of qualifying for the lowest mortgage rates in Canada. If your credit score is between 600 and 680, you may still have a mortgage option available to you, but they may be at higher rates. So it's obvious that the federal government's plan to count rent towards your credit score is meant to be a positive change. In today's rental market, where we're seeing more rental scams and non-paying renters, it only makes sense that this would lead to landlords becoming tighter. Adding in a layer to further enhance the screening process would benefit landlords too. They'd be able to see a renter's payment history, and if there's a history of non-payment, then that's a red flag. But if payments are always made on time, then a landlord can have more confidence in the tenant, who now has an advantage of an official rental report through their credit history. This also could help renters who are on their way to buying their first home. They've got their savings ready, steady jobs, but maybe struggling with their credit because of their past history. It also gives the younger generation a chance to build their credit as they rent and hopefully save money for their first home one day. But the more I looked into this, it started to become more apparent that there's also a downside to this that could actually hurt more renters instead of creating a positive impact on their journey of buying their first home. If a renter misses a single payment, would their landlord be able to report this right away and negatively impact the tenant's credit? If the landlord increases the rent and the tenant suddenly can't afford it anymore, are they out of luck with their credit score going down? Definitely something to consider. And there's still the overall problem that this does not solve, which is housing affordability and supply. An RBC report came out stating that more than 2/3 of Canadian households cannot afford to buy a home, and Canadian renters are getting pushed out of the market. This means that for renters, homeownership is more of a dream than it is a reality, and the chance and opportunity to build wealth through real estate becomes less. It's great that credit goes up, it opens up the door for more opportunity, but renters need more than just rent reporting that helps their credit. As long as the overall housing supply remains lower than what's needed to meet the demand in our real estate market, then credit rating alone isn't enough to make a serious impact to allow for more buyers into the market. In fact, more buyers just means higher home prices as long as supply doesn't change, and more savings are needed to catch up to rising home prices. Now, on the other hand, there's also a downside I can see to all of this. If renters decide one day that they're not going to pay rent for whatever reason, this would instead negatively impact their credit. Based on what I've seen at the landlord-tenant board, there are renters out there who simply cannot afford their rent, especially at the rate that rents keep going up. Canada's average rent prices went up 20% to just over $2,000 per month since the lowest point just 3 years ago during the pandemic in April 2021. The average rent was just over $1,600 per month, and those numbers are higher in Toronto, where it's known to be a rental crisis. It's because of vacancy rates are at their lowest over the last several decades. Vacancy for rental units in Canada were at a record low of 1.5% last year due to population growth, and Toronto recorded a 1.4 vacancy rate. Rents in Toronto during the last quarter of 2023 went up 41%, and the Toronto Real Estate Board's latest rental market report stated that the average one-bedroom apartment rent was almost $2,600. A two-bedroom unit was closer to $3,200 on average. Three-bedroom apartment rentals were closer to $4,000 per month. We would have naturally seen this kind of price growth in the rental market due to the increasing demand for rental housing from a strong population growth driven by immigration and non-permanent residents. On top of that, it doesn't help that housing affordability is something that kind of doesn't exist. And just because I can bring up my credit score doesn't suddenly give me the opportunity to afford a home in this market of unaffordable housing. Higher credit scores might only play a small role in the current housing market with high demand and low supply. In fact, the worst case scenario is that someone who brings up their credit from on-time rent payments gets approved to buy the first first home, ends up overpaying for that first home because of how the GTA property market works, and then gets hit with rising mortgage rates due to inflation and economic correction, like what's been happening over the last 4 years. Rising home prices is another reason for the competitive rental market we have in the city. Believe it or not, I've seen rental listings with offer presentation dates where bidding wars are encouraged between renters, and I think that's absolutely disgusting. While rents keep going up, it almost makes the idea of counting rent payments towards credit scores a bad idea. If rents are increased above the rate set by the Ontario guideline, there will be renters who default on their rent payments to their landlords. And trust me when I say that there are landlords out there who consciously make attempts to illegally increase rents on their tenants. If you're a tenant, watch out for any rental property purposed units and properties that are newer than November 2018. They are not subject to rent control, which means they do not follow the standard rent increase guideline set by the Ontario government. Rent on these properties built after November 2018 can be raised to whatever the landlord wants. Subscribe for more videos to help you reach your real estate goals. Thanks for watching.